The Nevada sun blazed mercilessly across Nellis Air Force Base as Captain Sarah Mitchell walked across the scorching tarmac, her flight suit clinging to her lean frame. The annual weapons school graduation exercise buzzed with activity around her, but she moved with quiet purpose toward the briefing hangar where Colonel James Hartwell held court among the assembled pilots. Inside the air-conditioned briefing room, Sarah slipped into a back-row seat as Hartwell's voice boomed across the space. The colonel stood tall and imposing, his chest decorated with ribbons that caught the fluorescent light as he gestured dramatically toward the mission board. "Any jet will do for close air support," Hartwell declared with a dismissive wave toward the A-10 squadron assignments. "The real pilots will handle the precision strikes and air superiority missions." His eyes swept past Sarah as if she were invisible, lingering instead on the male F-16 and F-22 pilots who nodded approvingly. Sarah felt the familiar sting of dismissal wash over her, but her expression remained unchanged. She had learned long ago that reactions only fueled men like Hartwell. Instead, she focused on the mission parameters scrolling across the display screen, mentally calculating approach vectors and engagement zones with the precision that had kept her alive through countless combat sorties. Major Rodriguez, seated 2 rows ahead, turned slightly and caught Sarah's eye with a subtle shake of his head. He had flown with her before and knew what Hartwell was overlooking, but protocol demanded silence in the colonel's briefing. The demonstration exercise would test each pilot's ability to provide close air support to simulated ground forces trapped in hostile territory. Hartwell assigned the flashy fighter jets to complex interdiction missions while relegating the A-10 pilots to what he called cleanup duty. Sarah listened as he detailed the scenario with theatrical flair, describing how the fighter pilots would showcase American air power while the attack aircraft provided basic ground support. His tone suggested the A-10 missions were almost an afterthought, necessary only to complete the exercise requirements. Where in the world are you watching this unfold, and have you ever seen someone completely underestimated based on first impressions? As the briefing concluded, Sarah gathered her materials and headed toward the door, passing clusters of pilots already discussing their assigned missions with excitement. She caught fragments of conversations about kill ratios and sophisticated targeting systems, the kind of talk that dominated ready rooms filled with fighter jocks. The colonel's voice followed her toward the exit. "Remember, Mitchell, just keep it simple out there. Point and shoot is about all we need from the Warthog drivers today." His comment drew chuckles from several pilots, but Sarah kept walking without turning around. Outside, the desert heat hit her face like a furnace blast, but it felt cleaner than the atmosphere she had just left. She pulled her baseball cap low over her eyes and began the walk toward her aircraft, where her crew chief would be conducting pre-flight inspections on the machine that had become more than just her assigned aircraft over the years. The A-10 Thunderbolt II sat on the flight line like a sleeping predator, its distinctive twin engines mounted high above the fuselage and its massive GAU-8 cannon visible beneath the nose. To most observers, it looked brutal and ungainly compared to the sleek fighters parked nearby, but Sarah saw something different when she looked at her aircraft. She saw a lifeline for soldiers pinned down in hostile territory, a guardian angel that could deliver precision fire danger close to friendly forces, and a testament to American engineering that prioritized mission success over aesthetic appeal. Most importantly, she saw the aircraft that had earned her a reputation among ground troops that Colonel Hartwell would never understand. As she approached her A-10, Sarah's mind shifted from the briefing room politics to the mission ahead, unaware that today's exercise would force everyone to confront the gap between perception and reality. Sarah's boots crunched against the gravel as she walked the perimeter of her A-10, running through the pre-flight inspection that had become second nature after 8 years of flying combat missions. Her hands moved automatically across control surfaces and weapons pylons while her mind drifted to the missions that had shaped her into the pilot Colonel Hartwell refused to see. The first time ground troops had called her guardian angel was during a firefight outside Kandahar in 2019. A Marine patrol had been pinned down by insurgents in a compound barely 200 meters from friendly positions. The forward air controller's voice had crackled through her headset with barely controlled panic as he described the impossible geometry of the engagement. Sarah had put her A-10 into a steep dive, threading the needle between mountains and minarets to deliver 30mm cannon fire with surgical precision. The insurgent positions had been neutralized without a single round landing within 300 meters of the Marines. When she had circled back for battle damage assessment, the radio had exploded with grateful voices calling her their guardian angel. That mission had been the first of 47 close air support sorties that would earn her 3 distinguished flying crosses and a reputation that spread through forward operating bases across 2 theaters of operation. Infantry units specifically requested her call sign when planning operations in contested areas, knowing that HOG 27 could deliver ordnance closer to friendly positions than any other pilot in theater. Staff Sergeant Williams, her crew chief, appeared beside her aircraft carrying a clipboard and wearing the satisfied expression of a maintainer whose bird was mission ready. "Captain Mitchell, she's fueled and armed according to today's loadout," he said, patting the A-10's armored belly with obvious affection. 30mm cannon is loaded with high explosive incendiary rounds, and we've got practice bombs on stations 3 and 9. Sarah nodded her approval, but Williams wasn't finished. "Ma'am, I heard some of the fighter boys talking earlier," he continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "They think today's going to be easy pickings with the ground support missions." Williams had been maintaining A-10s for 15 years and had heard similar talk before every exercise. The crew chief's loyalty touched Sarah, but she had learned not to let others' expectations define her performance. The mission would speak for itself, just as her combat record had spoken to the soldiers whose lives she had protected during multiple deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq. Have you ever had someone in your life who quietly excelled while others got the recognition, and what time is it where you're watching this story unfold? Sarah climbed into her cockpit and began the familiar ritual of strapping herself into the ejection seat, adjusting mirrors, and setting radio frequencies. The A-10's cockpit felt like a second home after thousands of hours spent behind its controls, every switch and display positioned exactly where muscle memory expected to find them. As she ran through her engine start checklist, Sarah thought about the soldiers who had sent her letters over the years. Staff Sergeant Martinez from Fort Bragg had written to thank her for the mission that had saved his squad during a Taliban ambush. Corporal Johnson had included a photo of his newborn daughter with a note explaining that he was alive to meet her because of Sarah's precision flying during a danger-close fire mission. The letters filled a shoebox in her quarters, each one representing a life preserved by her ability to deliver devastating firepower within meters of friendly positions. These testimonials meant more to her than any ribbon or medal, because they represented the true measure of a close air support pilot's worth. Her engines spooled up with their distinctive whine, and Sarah contacted ground control for taxi clearance. Around her, the other exercise participants were conducting their own pre-flight preparations, but the atmosphere felt different among the fighter squadrons. Their conversations carried the confidence of pilots who knew they would be the stars of today's demonstration. Sarah understood their perspective even as she disagreed with it. Fighter pilots trained to engage targets at beyond visual range using sophisticated missiles and radar systems. Their world was measured in Mach numbers and engagement envelopes that stretched across hundreds of miles. The close air support mission seemed primitive by comparison, requiring pilots to operate in the visual arena where split-second decisions meant the difference between mission success and friendly fire incidents. What the fighter community consistently failed to appreciate was the complexity of integrating air power with ground operations in close proximity to friendly forces. It required a different kind of precision, one that demanded intimate knowledge of battlefield geometry and the ability to deliver ordnance with absolute accuracy under intense pressure. As Sarah taxied toward the runway, she felt the familiar calm that preceded every combat mission settling over her. Today's exercise would test every skill she had developed during her years of operational flying, and she intended to demonstrate exactly why ground troops called her their guardian angel. The ready room buzzed with pre-mission energy as pilots from various squadrons gathered around the large tactical display showing the exercise airspace. Colonel Hartwell stood at the front, his pointer tapping against different sectors of the map as he assigned specific areas of responsibility to each aircraft type. Captain Jake Morrison from the F-16 squadron leaned back in his chair with practiced nonchalance, his flight suit adorned with patches from previous assignments at prestigious fighter wings. "The interdiction missions are where we'll really show what modern air power can accomplish," he said loud enough for the room to hear. "High-speed, high-altitude precision strikes using advanced targeting pods and smart munitions." Several other fighter pilots nodded in agreement, their conversation carrying the easy confidence of aviators who had trained extensively in air-to-air combat and beyond visual range engagements. Major Thompson from the F-22 squadron added his own commentary about stealth capabilities and sensor fusion, technical terms that sounded impressive to anyone unfamiliar with tactical aviation. Sarah sat quietly in the corner, reviewing her mission materials while listening to the ongoing discussion about sophisticated weapon systems and cutting-edge technology. She noticed how the conversation consistently emphasized speed, altitude, and standoff distance as measures of combat effectiveness. Colonel Hartwell's voice cut through the chatter as he moved to the close air support portion of the briefing. "Now for the ground support elements," he said, his tone shifting to something that sounded almost apologetic. "The A-10 pilots will handle the basic battlefield cleanup once our fighters have cleared the high-value targets." Captain Morrison turned in his seat to look at Sarah and the other Warthog pilots. "At least someone has to handle the easy missions," he said with a grin that didn't quite hide his condescension. "Point the nose down, pull the trigger, and hope you hit something before the enemy figures out how slow you're flying." The comment drew laughter from several pilots, but Sarah kept her expression neutral while making notes about weapon release altitudes and target coordinates. She had heard variations of the same joke countless times throughout her career, usually from aviators who had never flown close air support in combat conditions. Lieutenant Colonel Davis from the F-15E Strike Eagle Squadron joined the conversation with his own observations about the limitations of single-role aircraft. "The Warthog was designed for a different era," he explained to the group. "Today's battlefield requires multi-role flexibility and the ability to adapt quickly to changing threat environments." Sarah's pen continued moving across her mission planning sheet as she calculated fuel consumption rates and loiter times for the assigned target areas. The mathematics of close air support were unforgiving, requiring precise coordination between aircraft capabilities and ground force requirements within narrow margins for error. Major Rodriguez caught her eye from across the room and offered a subtle shake of his head, but Sarah had long since stopped taking offense at such comments. The fighter community's dismissive attitude toward attack aviation was as predictable as their surprise when A-10 pilots consistently outperformed expectations during joint exercises. Colonel Hartwell moved to the timeline portion of the briefing, explaining how the demonstration would unfold for the visiting dignitaries and senior officers who would be observing from the control tower. The fighter missions would begin with dramatic high-speed passes and simulated bombing runs designed to showcase American air superiority. "The close air support phase will demonstrate our ability to provide battlefield assistance to ground forces," Hartwell continued, though his tone suggested this portion was included more for completeness than excitement. "The A-10S will show how we can deliver ordnance in support of troops in contact scenarios." Captain Morrison raised his hand with a question about the scoring criteria for the exercise. "Sir, will the ground support missions be weighted equally with the interdiction strikes?" His question carried an undertone that suggested he hoped for a negative answer. Hartwell paused before responding, clearly considering the political implications of his answer given the mixed audience. "All missions will be evaluated according to their specific objectives," he said diplomatically. "However, the complexity and technical demands of the fighter missions naturally require more sophisticated assessment criteria." Sarah finished her mission planning calculations and looked up to see several pilots watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed amusement. She understood their perspective even while disagreeing with their conclusions about the relative difficulty of different mission types. The briefing concluded with standard reminders about communication procedures and emergency protocols. As pilots began filing out toward their respective aircraft, Sarah heard fragments of conversation about anticipated performance differences and predictions about which squadrons would dominate the exercise scoring. She gathered her materials and headed toward the door, passing groups of fighter pilots already celebrating victories they hadn't yet achieved. Their confidence was infectious, and Sarah could see why observers might assume the exercise outcome was predetermined based purely on aircraft capabilities and technological advantages. Outside the briefing room, the Nevada heat struck her face with renewed intensity as she walked toward the flight line where ground crews were conducting final preparations on all participating aircraft. Sarah walked methodically around her A-10, conducting the detailed inspection that separated professional aviators from those who relied purely on ground crew maintenance. Her hands moved across every external component with the precision of someone who understood that attention to detail meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. While fighter pilots across the ramp engaged in animated discussions about their assigned targets and planned approaches, Sarah worked in contemplative silence. She checked the alignment of her GAU-8 cannon barrel, verified the security of practice bomb attachments, and examined every control surface for signs of wear or damage that might affect flight characteristics. Staff Sergeant Williams appeared beside her with a thermos of coffee and a knowing smile. "Ma'am, I've been working on warthogs since before some of these fighter boys learned to tie their boots," he said quietly. "I've seen a lot of pilots come through here, but I've never seen anyone prepare for a mission like you do." Sarah accepted the coffee gratefully, using the warm cup to steady her hands against the desert wind that had begun gusting across the flight line. The pre-mission routine helped focus her mind on the tactical challenges ahead rather than the dismissive comments she had endured during the briefing. Her approach to mission planning differed fundamentally from the fighter pilot methodology she had observed. Where they focused on sophisticated targeting systems and standoff weapons delivery, Sarah concentrated on the geometry of close air support and the complex calculations required to deliver ordnance safely near friendly positions. She pulled out her tactical chart and spread it across the A-10's wing, using colored pencils to mark approach corridors and escape routes for each assigned target area. The exercise scenarios called for simulated troops in contact situations where friendly and enemy positions would be separated by minimal distances. Sarah traced potential flight paths with her finger, mentally rehearsing the visual references she would use to identify targets and the precise timing required to coordinate with ground controllers. Close air support demanded split-second decision-making based on rapidly changing battlefield conditions that couldn't be programmed into sophisticated computer systems. The mathematics were unforgiving. Delivering 30mm cannon fire or 500-pound bombs within 200 meters of friendly troops required absolute precision in airspeed control, dive angle calculation, and weapon release timing. A single degree of error in attack heading could mean the difference between mission success and friendly fire tragedy. Williams watched her work with obvious respect. "Captain, I heard some of the maintenance guys from the fighter squadrons talking earlier," he said. "They think today's exercise is going to be a showcase for their birds. They don't understand what we do over here." Sarah continued marking her chart while considering Williams' observation. The crew chief had deployed with her to Afghanistan twice and had witnessed firsthand the complexity of close air support operations in combat conditions. His perspective carried weight earned through shared experience under hostile fire. The A-10 community operated according to different principles than the fighter world. Where speed and altitude provided safety margins for air-to-air combat, close air support required pilots to operate low and slow in visual contact with ground forces. The mission demanded intimate familiarity with small unit tactics and the ability to distinguish between friendly and enemy positions from rapidly changing perspectives. Sarah folded her chart and secured it in her flight suit pocket, then began the process of strapping herself into the ejection seat. The cockpit felt familiar and comfortable, every switch and display positioned exactly where thousands of hours of flight time had taught her to expect them. Her hands moved through the engine start checklist with practiced efficiency while her mind focused on the tactical scenarios she would face during the exercise. The simulated ground forces would be positioned in terrain that replicated the complex urban and rural environments where real troops engaged actual enemies. As her engines reached operating temperature, Sarah contacted ground control for taxi clearance and began the process of joining the formation that would demonstrate American air power to the assembled observers. Around her, other aircraft were conducting similar preparations, but the atmosphere felt different among the various squadrons. The fighter pilots radiated confidence born from training in air-to-air combat scenarios where technological advantages provided clear superiority over potential adversaries. Their conversations carried excitement about the opportunity to showcase sophisticated weapon systems and advanced tactical capabilities. Sarah understood their enthusiasm while recognizing the fundamental difference between their mission focus and hers. Air-to-air combat occurred in three-dimensional space where superior technology and training usually determined outcomes. Close air support took place in a constrained environment where political and tactical considerations limited the application of overwhelming firepower. She taxied into position behind the lead aircraft, checking her instruments one final time before takeoff. The exercise would test every skill she had developed during years of operational flying, and she intended to demonstrate the precision that had earned her the trust of ground forces throughout multiple combat deployments. The tower cleared their formation for takeoff, and Sarah advanced her throttles to military power while maintaining formation position. As her A-10 lifted off the runway, she felt the familiar satisfaction of an aircraft responding exactly as designed to pilot inputs, ready to prove that mission effectiveness couldn't be measured purely by speed or technological sophistication. The exercise commenced with theatrical precision as F-16s streaked across the Nevada desert at 500 knots, their afterburners painting bright orange trails against the cloudless sky. From the observation tower, visiting generals and defense contractors watched through binoculars as the sleek fighters executed high-speed bombing runs on simulated enemy installations. Captain Morrison's voice crackled through the radio frequency as he reported successful target engagement from 30,000 feet altitude. Viper lead has good hits on the primary target complex, he announced with satisfaction. Moving to secondary objectives for follow-up strikes. The demonstration continued with F-22 Raptors showcasing their stealth capabilities through beyond visual range intercepts, followed by F-15E Strike Eagles delivering precision-guided munitions against hardened targets. Each aircraft type performed exactly as designed, impressing observers with displays of speed, altitude, and technological superiority. Colonel Hartwell's voice filled the radio net as he provided commentary for the assembled dignitaries. "Ladies and gentlemen, you're witnessing the cutting edge of American air power," he announced proudly. "These systems represent decades of technological advancement and billions of dollars in research and development." Sarah maintained her assigned holding pattern at 15,000 feet, monitoring the exercise progress while waiting for the close air support phase to begin. Below her, the desert floor revealed the carefully constructed training scenarios where simulated ground forces waited in positions designed to replicate real combat conditions. The first hint of trouble emerged when Captain Morrison attempted his second target engagement. "Viper lead is having difficulty acquiring the secondary target," he reported, his earlier confidence replaced by confusion. "The targeting pod isn't painting the correct coordinates." Major Thompson from the F-22 squadron encountered similar problems during his assigned intercept mission. "Raptor One shows multiple ghost returns on radar," he announced. Unable to distinguish between actual targets and electronic countermeasures. Sarah listened to the mounting technical difficulties with professional interest but without surprise. Exercise designers routinely incorporated realistic threat environments that challenged pilots' skills beyond the capabilities of automated systems. Success required adaptability and tactical knowledge that couldn't be programmed into computer displays. The problems cascaded quickly as sophisticated targeting systems failed to compensate for the complex electronic warfare environment that simulated real battlefield conditions. Fighter pilots found themselves struggling with scenarios that demanded visual target identification and manual weapons delivery techniques that had been largely automated out of their training curriculum. Have you ever watched someone's overconfidence crumble when faced with unexpected challenges, and what would you do in a situation where your expertise suddenly became crucial? Captain Morrison's frustration became evident as his third attack run failed to achieve the desired results. The advanced targeting system kept defaulting to safe mode due to proximity warnings from friendly force simulators positioned throughout the exercise area. His training had emphasized beyond visual range engagements where such considerations were irrelevant. Colonel Hartwell's commentary became noticeably more subdued as the fighter demonstrations failed to achieve their planned objectives. Technical difficulties continued mounting as pilots discovered that their sophisticated systems couldn't adapt to the complex threat environment designed to replicate actual combat conditions. Meanwhile, Sarah completed her pre-attack checklist with methodical precision, reviewing target coordinates and friendly force positions that she had memorized during her ground study. The close air support scenarios required intimate familiarity with small unit tactics and the ability to deliver ordnance accurately in contested environments. The radio frequency erupted with confused transmissions as fighter pilots attempted to troubleshoot their targeting problems while maintaining formation integrity. Their advanced systems had been designed for different mission types and struggled to provide effective solutions for the visual target identification scenarios embedded in the exercise. Sarah's turn approached as the demonstration moved into the close air support phase that Colonel Hartwell had dismissed as routine cleanup work. The simulated ground controller's voice filled her headset with coordinates for friendly forces pinned down by enemy fire in terrain that replicated urban combat environments. She rolled her A-10 into a shallow dive, visually acquiring the target area through her heads-up display while cross-referencing with the tactical chart secured to her kneeboard. The geometry of the engagement required precise calculation of approach angles and weapon release parameters that couldn't be delegated to automated systems. The first target appeared exactly where her mission planning had predicted, clearly distinguishable from friendly positions through careful observation of terrain features and reference points. Sarah adjusted her dive angle and airspeed to achieve the precise parameters required for accurate 30mm cannon delivery. Her finger found the trigger as the target centered in her heads-up display, and the GAU-8 cannon erupted with its distinctive sound that had earned the A-10 its Warthog nickname. High explosive rounds impacted directly on target with devastating accuracy, eliminating the simulated enemy position without endangering nearby friendly forces. HOG-27 has good hits on target Alpha, Sarah reported calmly while climbing to reposition for the next engagement. Ready for additional tasking. The radio frequency fell momentarily silent as observers processed what they had just witnessed. Sarah's first attack run had achieved in 30 seconds what the fighter aircraft had been attempting unsuccessfully for the previous 20 minutes. The control tower atmosphere grew tense as Colonel Hartwell watched his carefully orchestrated demonstration unraveling before the assembled dignitaries. General Patricia Hayes, the three-star visitor from Air Combat Command, lowered her binoculars with a questioning expression that made Hartwell's jaw tighten visibly. "Sir, we have multiple aircraft reporting targeting system malfunctions," announced the exercise controller, his voice carrying barely concealed concern. "The F-16s are unable to achieve positive target identification in the simulated threat environment." Hartwell grabbed the radio microphone with more force than necessary. "Viper Lead, can you confirm your targeting pod is functioning within normal parameters?" His question carried an edge that suggested mechanical failure was the only acceptable explanation for the performance degradation. Captain Morrison's response crackled through the speakers with obvious frustration. "Sir, all systems show green on our diagnostics, but we can't distinguish between actual targets and decoys in this electronic warfare environment. The targeting computer keeps cycling between multiple false returns." Sarah's voice cut through the confusion with calm professionalism as she reported successful engagement of her second assigned target. HOG-27 has eliminated the mortar position at grid coordinates 784, 620. Friendly forces have resumed movement toward their objective. The contrast was becoming impossible to ignore. While sophisticated fighter aircraft struggled with their assigned missions, the unglamorous A-10 was systematically destroying targets with precision that impressed even the most skeptical observers in the tower. General Hayes turned to Colonel Hartwell with raised eyebrows. "Colonel, perhaps you could explain why the close air support aircraft is outperforming your advanced fighters?" Her question was delivered with the diplomatic tone that senior officers used when they expected detailed explanations. Hartwell's face flushed as he scrambled for an answer that wouldn't embarrass him in front of his superiors. "The A-10 missions are significantly less complex, General," he replied, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Visual target identification is much simpler than beyond visual range engagements." Sarah rolled into her third attack run, this time engaging a simulated anti-aircraft position that had been giving the fighter aircraft problems throughout the morning. The target was positioned among civilian structures in a scenario designed to test pilot judgment and precision under restrictive rules of engagement. Her approach required threading between terrain features while maintaining visual contact with both the target and nearby friendly positions marked by colored smoke grenades. The geometry demanded split-second timing and absolute accuracy in weapon release calculations. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to prove yourself when everyone else was struggling, and how did it feel to finally show what you were truly capable of? The GAU-8 cannon spoke again with devastating effectiveness, eliminating the anti-aircraft threat without damaging adjacent structures or endangering the simulated civilian population. Sarah's precision flying demonstrated the years of training and combat experience that Colonel Hartwell had dismissed so casually. HOG-27 has neutralized the Tripoli site, Sarah reported matter-of-factly. Ground forces are cleared to advance through Sector Bravo. Major Thompson's F-22 made another unsuccessful pass at his assigned target, his sophisticated radar systems unable to penetrate the electronic countermeasures that simulated real battlefield conditions. Raptor One is still unable to achieve target lock, he announced with growing embarrassment. The exercise controller's voice reflected mounting concern as he updated Colonel Hartwell on the overall mission status. Sir, the fighter aircraft have successfully engaged only 30% of their assigned targets. Meanwhile, the A-10 has achieved 100% success rate on all assigned missions. General Hayes no longer attempted to hide her interest in the unfolding demonstration. She watched through binoculars as Sarah's A-10 maneuvered for another attack run, her movements precise and economical despite the aircraft's supposedly ungainly characteristics. That pilot knows exactly what she's doing, the general observed to her aide, loud enough for Colonel Hartwell to overhear. I haven't seen flying like that since my days as a squadron commander. Sarah's fourth target engagement showcased her ability to deliver ordnance in extremely close proximity to friendly forces. The simulated scenario placed enemy positions within 200 meters of Allied troops, requiring the kind of precision that automated systems couldn't safely attempt. She rolled inverted to acquire the target visually, then pulled through into a steep dive that brought her A-10 to within 500 feet of the desert floor. Her cannon rounds impacted exactly on target while the muzzle flashes reflected off her cockpit canopy, creating a dramatic visual that impressed everyone watching from the tower. The radio frequency filled with congratulations from the ground controller as simulated friendly forces reported successful mission completion. HOG-27, outstanding precision on that engagement. Ground forces are advancing on schedule thanks to your support. Colonel Hartwell found himself in the uncomfortable position of watching his exercise assumptions crumble in real time. The aircraft he had dismissed as obsolete was demonstrating capabilities that his advanced fighters couldn't match under realistic combat conditions. Sarah climbed away from the target area and contacted the exercise controller for additional tasking. HOG-27 is mission ready with full ordnance remaining. Available for immediate retasking to support ground operations. Her calm professionalism stood in stark contrast to the frustrated transmissions coming from the fighter aircraft still struggling with their original assignments. The demonstration was revealing fundamental differences between training for air-to-air combat and the tactical requirements of close air support missions. The exercise reached its climactic moment when the radio crackled with an emergency transmission that sent ice through every pilot's veins. Mayday, Mayday, this is Groundhog 6. We have troops in immediate danger, taking heavy casualties from concealed enemy positions. Need immediate close air support, danger close, troops in contact. The simulated emergency scenario had been designed to test pilot capabilities under maximum stress conditions. Ground forces were pinned down in a valley surrounded by elevated enemy positions, with friendly and hostile locations separated by less than 50 meters in several areas. Colonel Hartwell grabbed the radio microphone, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. All available aircraft, we have a troops in contact situation. This is a real-world scenario test. Whoever can respond immediately, do so now. Captain Morrison's F-16 was closest to the area, but his response revealed the limitations of his training. Viper lead is overhead, but I cannot safely engage targets this close to friendly positions. My targeting system shows multiple proximity warnings. Major Thompson in his F-22 encountered similar problems. Raptor One cannot distinguish between friendly and enemy positions at this distance. Request higher altitude clearance for standoff weapons engagement. The exercise controller's voice carried genuine urgency as he relayed updates from the simulated ground forces. We have multiple casualties and are taking sustained fire from 3 different positions. Estimate 10 minutes before position is overrun without immediate air support. Sarah's A-10 was 15 miles away, but she had been monitoring the emergency frequency and was already turning toward the coordinates. Hog 27 is inbound to the troops in contact location, ETA 3 minutes. Request immediate target brief from ground controller. The forward air controller's voice painted a desperate picture through the radio static. Hog 27, we have enemy machine gun positions on ridgelines north and east of our location. Friendlies are marked with orange smoke, but some positions are within 50 meters of hostile fire. General Hayes stepped closer to the radio console in the control tower, her experienced ear detecting the gravity of the situation even though this was an exercise. The scenario was designed to replicate the kind of danger-close engagement that had defined combat operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. When was the last time you witnessed someone step up during a critical moment when everyone else hesitated, and what gives certain people the courage to act when stakes are highest? Sarah's response demonstrated the calm professionalism that came from years of similar missions in actual combat. Hog 27 understands troops in contact, danger close engagement authorized. I have orange smoke in sight and am beginning my attack run. She rolled her A-10 into a steep dive, visually acquiring the complex battlefield geometry that had confused the sophisticated targeting systems of the fighter aircraft. Her eyes moved rapidly between friendly positions marked by smoke and the muzzle flashes of enemy weapons that provided clear target identification. The first enemy machine gun position became visible as a brief flicker of light from a rocky outcropping barely 40 meters from the nearest friendly smoke marker. Sarah adjusted her dive angle and airspeed to achieve the precise parameters required for surgical cannon accuracy. Her GAU-8 erupted with controlled bursts that walked 30mm rounds directly onto the enemy position while maintaining perfect clearance from friendly forces. The simulation registered immediate cessation of hostile fire from that location as Sarah pulled up and repositioned for the next target. Hog 27 has eliminated the north position, she reported while banking hard to align with the second target. Moving to engage the eastern ridge line. Colonel Hartwell watched in stunned silence as Sarah systematically destroyed each enemy position with precision that bordered on the impossible. Her A-10 maneuvered through the confined valley like a predator that had found its natural element, delivering accurate fire despite the complex three-dimensional puzzle of friendly and enemy positions. The exercise controller's voice reflected amazement as he relayed simulated battle damage assessments. All enemy positions have been neutralized. Ground forces report 0 friendly fire incidents and are resuming their advance. General Hayes lowered her binoculars and turned to face Colonel Hartwell with an expression that made his stomach drop. "Colonel, I think it's time we had a conversation about your assessment of pilot capabilities." Sarah's final transmission carried the same calm professionalism that had characterized her performance throughout the exercise. Hog 27 is returning to station, mission complete. Ground forces have resumed movement toward their objective. The radio frequency fell silent except for the grateful voices of simulated ground troops expressing their thanks to the pilot who had just saved their lives in what felt like a remarkably realistic training scenario. The demonstration had revealed capabilities that surprised everyone except Sarah herself. Captain Morrison's voice finally broke the silence with a transmission that carried new respect. Hog 27, outstanding flying. I've never seen precision like that in a danger-close environment. The exercise had reached its turning point, and everyone in the control tower understood that their assumptions about aircraft capabilities and pilot skills were about to undergo fundamental revision. Sarah's performance had transformed what was supposed to be routine cleanup work into a masterclass in tactical aviation under the most demanding conditions possible. As Sarah's A-10 climbed away from the target area, the control tower buzzed with conversations that would have been unthinkable an hour earlier. General Hayes stood with her arms crossed, studying the tactical display that showed the complete mission results in stark numerical terms. The exercise scoring system painted a picture that demolished every assumption Colonel Hartwell had made during his briefing. Fighter aircraft had achieved partial success on less than 40% of their assigned targets, while the single A-10 had completed 100% of missions with zero collateral damage incidents. "Sir, we're receiving priority radio traffic from the simulated ground forces," announced the communications officer. "They're requesting to speak directly with the A-10 pilot." Colonel Hartwell's face had progressed from flushed embarrassment to ashen realization as he watched his carefully planned demonstration collapse around him. The visiting dignitaries were asking pointed questions about training priorities and resource allocation that he wasn't prepared to answer. The forward air controller's voice filled the tower speakers with genuine emotion despite the exercise environment. "Hog 27, this is Groundhog 6 actual. I've been controlling close air support for 8 years, and I've never seen flying like that. You just demonstrated textbook precision under impossible conditions." Sarah's response carried the same professional calm that had characterized her performance throughout the morning. "Groundhog 6, just doing the job we trained for. Glad we could help get your people home safely." General Hayes moved closer to the radio console, her interest clearly piqued by the exchange between the ground controller and the A-10 pilot. She had commanded tactical units during her career and understood the significance of what she had just witnessed. Major Rodriguez appeared at Colonel Hartwell's shoulder with a clipboard containing detailed mission analysis data. "Sir, the preliminary scoring shows some interesting patterns," he said diplomatically. "The close air support missions achieved success rates that exceeded our most optimistic projections. Captain Morrison's F-16 made another attempt at his original target, but his sophisticated targeting system continued to struggle with the electronic warfare environment. Viper Lead is still unable to achieve positive target identification," he reported with obvious frustration. The contrast became more pronounced with each passing minute. While fighter aircraft continued wrestling with technical problems that their training hadn't prepared them to solve, Sarah maintained perfect situational awareness and mission effectiveness despite flying what everyone considered an outdated platform. Sarah's voice cut through the mounting confusion as she offered assistance to the struggling fighters. "Any aircraft requiring visual target identification support, Hog 27 can provide on-scene reconnaissance and target marking." Her offer revealed a level of tactical knowledge and battlefield awareness that surprised even experienced pilots in the formation. Most A-10 pilots focused narrowly on their assigned close air support roles, but Sarah demonstrated understanding of integrated air operations that extended far beyond her primary mission area. Colonel Hartwell found himself facing a reality that challenged everything he believed about modern air power. The aircraft he had dismissed as a relic was outperforming his most advanced fighters under conditions that were supposed to showcase 21st-century technological superiority. The exercise controller's voice reflected growing respect as he coordinated additional tasking. "Hog 27, we have reports of mobile surface-to-air missile threats in Sector Charlie. Can you provide reconnaissance and threat assessment?" Sarah's response demonstrated familiarity with enemy tactics that went far beyond basic flight training. "Roger, moving to investigate Sector Charlie. I'll use terrain masking to approach from the southwest where the elevation provides natural concealment from radar detection." Her tactical commentary revealed depth of knowledge that impressed everyone monitoring the radio frequency. Sarah understood not just how to fly her aircraft, but how to employ it effectively within the complex three-dimensional chess game of modern combat operations. General Hayes pulled Colonel Hartwell aside for a private conversation that everyone in the tower could sense was not going well for the colonel. The general's body language conveyed serious displeasure with the gap between promised capabilities and actual performance. Meanwhile, Sarah continued executing missions with a level of competence that transformed the exercise from a demonstration of American air power into an education about the difference between technological sophistication and tactical effectiveness. Her A-10 appeared over Sector Charlie flying barely 200 feet above the desert floor, using terrain features to mask her approach from simulated enemy radar systems. The low-altitude reconnaissance required exceptional piloting skills and intimate knowledge of threat systems. "Hog 27 has located the mobile SAM site," Sarah reported after completing her reconnaissance pass. Target is concealed in a wadi approximately 3 clicks southeast of the primary objective. Recommend coordinated suppression mission. The tactical picture she painted through her radio transmissions revealed situational awareness that extended far beyond her immediate area of operations. Sarah understood how individual targets fit into larger enemy defensive schemes and could recommend integrated solutions that maximized mission effectiveness. Her performance was systematically destroying Colonel Hartwell's credibility while establishing her own reputation as something far more significant than just another close air support pilot flying an aging attack aircraft. The desert sun reached its zenith as Sarah's A-10 continued to dominate every aspect of the exercise while sophisticated fighter aircraft struggled with missions that should have been routine demonstrations of American air superiority. General Hayes had stopped pretending to observe casually and was now taking detailed notes about performance discrepancies. Colonel Hartwell's radio transmissions became increasingly desperate as he attempted to salvage his demonstration. "All aircraft, we need to accelerate the mission timeline," he announced. "The visiting delegation has limited time remaining for observation." Sarah's response revealed tactical awareness that extended beyond individual mission completion to understanding of overall exercise objectives. HOG 27 can assume additional tasking if required. Currently have full ordnance remaining and maximum fuel for extended operations. Her offer highlighted another embarrassing reality that Colonel Hartwell hadn't anticipated. While fighter aircraft burned through fuel rapidly during their high-speed, high-altitude operations, the A-10's efficient turbofan engines provided extended loiter capability that maximized time over target areas. Captain Morrison's voice carried obvious frustration as he reported continued difficulties with his sophisticated targeting systems. Viper Lead is returning to base due to fuel constraints. Unable to complete assigned secondary missions. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Morrison's F-16 had consumed its fuel allocation during repeated unsuccessful attack runs while Sarah's A-10 remained on station with capabilities for several more hours of sustained operations. Major Thompson encountered similar problems with his F-22 Raptor, despite its reputation as the most advanced fighter aircraft in the world. Raptor One is also approaching bingo fuel, he reported. Request permission to return to base for refueling. Sarah's tactical radio discipline contrasted sharply with the mounting confusion among other pilots as she coordinated with ground controllers to maximize her remaining time over the exercise area. Her communications reflected years of experience managing complex air-ground coordination under time-critical conditions. The exercise controller's voice carried obvious admiration as he relayed additional mission requests. HOG 27. Ground forces are reporting excellent results from your previous engagements. They're requesting immediate support for advance into Sector Delta. Sarah acknowledged the new tasking while simultaneously providing tactical recommendations that demonstrated comprehensive understanding of ground force requirements. Roger, moving to Sector Delta. Recommend artillery suppression of Northern Ridge prior to ground advance to minimize casualty risk. Her ability to think beyond immediate mission parameters impressed everyone monitoring the radio frequency. Most pilots focused narrowly on their assigned targets, but Sarah demonstrated integration of air and ground operations that maximized overall mission effectiveness. General Hayes approached the communications console and picked up the microphone with obvious intent. HOG 27, this is General Hayes. I'd like to speak with you directly after completion of current mission. The tower fell silent as everyone realized that a 3-star general was taking personal interest in an individual pilot's performance. Colonel Hartwell's face reflected the dawning understanding that his career was about to undergo significant scrutiny. Sarah's response carried professional respect without any indication of surprise or nervousness. Roger, General Hayes. HOG 27 will contact Tower Control upon mission completion for further instructions. Her calm acceptance of direct communication with senior leadership suggested familiarity with high-level military protocols that went far beyond typical captain-level experience. The implications were beginning to register with observant personnel in the control tower. Meanwhile, Sarah continued prosecuting targets with precision that had transformed the exercise from a demonstration into a masterclass in tactical aviation. Her A-10 moved through the desert airspace with authority that came from absolute confidence in aircraft capabilities and mission parameters. The simulated ground forces maintained constant radio contact with Sarah, their transmissions revealing the kind of pilot-ground coordination that developed only through extensive combat experience. The relationship between air and ground elements felt natural and practiced rather than the stilted communications typical of training exercises. HOG 27, ground forces report all objectives secured ahead of schedule, announced the forward air controller. Your precision engagement eliminated resistance that could have caused significant delays and casualties. Sarah's mission effectiveness had not only exceeded all expectations but had actually improved the overall exercise timeline by eliminating targets that would have required extensive ground combat to neutralize. Her contribution extended far beyond the close air support role that Colonel Hartwell had dismissed as cleanup work. As she completed her final attack run, Sarah's A-10 had achieved something unprecedented in recent exercise history. Every assigned mission completed successfully, zero collateral damage incidents, maximum efficiency in fuel and ordnance expenditure, and tactical integration that enhanced overall force effectiveness. The radio frequency buzzed with congratulatory transmissions from ground controllers, other pilots, and exercise coordinators who recognized they had witnessed something exceptional. Sarah's performance would be discussed in tactical development circles for months to come. Her calm professionalism throughout the exercise suggested this level of performance was routine rather than exceptional from her perspective, raising questions about her background and experience that were about to be answered in ways that would shock everyone involved. Sarah's A-10 touched down on the Nellis runway with the same precision that had characterized her entire performance, her landing roll perfectly centered on the runway centerline as ground crews scrambled to marshal her aircraft to the parking ramp. The exercise had concluded with results that would reshape every assumption about pilot capabilities and aircraft effectiveness. General Hayes stood waiting on the tarmac as Sarah shut down her engines, her 3-star rank insignia catching the desert sunlight while Colonel Hartwell lingered nervously several steps behind. The general's body language conveyed serious intent as she prepared for a conversation that everyone understood would be significant. Staff Sergeant Williams appeared beside Sarah's aircraft with his ground crew ladder, his face beaming with pride at his pilot's demonstration of exceptional flying. "Ma'am, I've never seen anything like what you did out there today," he said as Sarah began her post-flight inspection. The flight line buzzed with activity as other aircraft returned from the exercise, but the atmosphere felt different from the confident pre-mission preparations. Fighter pilots climbed out of their cockpits with expressions ranging from confusion to embarrassment as they processed their collective performance failure. Sarah completed her aircraft inspection with the same methodical attention to detail that had preceded her mission preparation, checking every system and component despite the obvious interest from senior leadership waiting nearby. Her professional priorities remained unchanged regardless of external circumstances. General Hayes approached as Sarah secured her flight helmet and gathered her mission materials. "Captain Mitchell, I'd like to discuss your performance today. That was some of the finest tactical flying I've witnessed in 30 years of military aviation." Sarah's response carried the same calm professionalism that had characterized her radio transmissions throughout the exercise. "Thank you, General. The A-10 performed exactly as designed for close air support missions." The general's eyes narrowed slightly as she studied Sarah's uniform and bearing with the practiced assessment of a senior officer who had spent decades evaluating military personnel. Something about the captain's confidence and tactical knowledge suggested experience that went far beyond typical pilot training. Have you ever had a moment when someone finally recognized your true capabilities after being overlooked for so long, and how did it feel to have your expertise acknowledged? Colonel Hartwell stepped forward with obvious nervousness, attempting to insert himself into the conversation. "General Hayes, Captain Mitchell has been assigned to our A-10 squadron for approximately 18 months. Her performance today exceeded all previous training evaluations." The general's attention remained focused on Sarah as she asked the question that would change everything. "Captain, your tactical awareness and mission execution suggest extensive combat experience. How many operational deployments have you completed?" Sarah's answer began quietly but carried weight that would reshape everyone's understanding of who they had been dismissing. I've completed 5 combat deployments, General. 3 to Afghanistan and 2 to Iraq, flying close air support missions for ground forces in contested areas. The revelation hit the assembled group like a physical blow. 5 combat deployments represented more operational experience than most pilots accumulated in entire careers, and explained the tactical expertise that had impressed everyone during the exercise. General Hayes' expression shifted from curiosity to genuine respect as she processed the implications of Sarah's combat record. "Captain, 5 deployments is extraordinary for someone of your rank and apparent age. What type of missions were you primarily assigned?" Sarah's response revealed the depth of experience that had enabled her flawless performance during the exercise. "Primarily danger close air support for Special Operations Forces and conventional infantry units. I flew 437 combat sorties providing fire support for troops in contact situations." The number was staggering. 437 combat missions represented more operational flying than most pilots would see in peacetime careers spanning decades. Each sortie had involved the kind of high-stakes precision flying that Sarah had demonstrated during the exercise. Colonel Hartwell's face went pale as he realized the magnitude of his error in dismissing someone with Sarah's combat credentials. His assumptions about A-10 pilots and close air support missions had been based on complete ignorance of the tactical complexity involved in real-world operations. General Hayes continued her questioning with growing amazement. "Captain, that level of combat experience is remarkable. What recognition have you received for your operational service?" Sarah's quiet response revealed achievements that would have made her famous in any other context. "I've been awarded 3 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 2 Air Medals with Valor, and a Bronze Star for ground actions during a forward operating base defense." The decorations represented extraordinary heroism under combat conditions, the kind of recognition reserved for military personnel who had performed far beyond normal duty requirements. Sarah's quiet demeanor had concealed a combat record that rivaled legendary military aviators. The general's voice carried obvious admiration as she processed Sarah's credentials. "Captain Mitchell, your record represents exactly the kind of tactical expertise our Air Force needs to emphasize. You've demonstrated capabilities that our most sophisticated aircraft couldn't match today." Sarah's response reflected the humility that had characterized her entire career despite achievements that warranted significant recognition. "General, the A-10 community trains extensively for these mission types. Today's results reflected the aircraft's design capabilities and the tactical training we receive." But everyone listening understood that Sarah's performance had transcended normal training and aircraft capabilities to demonstrate the kind of tactical mastery that came only from years of combat experience under the most demanding conditions possible. General Hayes stepped closer to Sarah, her voice dropping to a more personal tone as the magnitude of the captain's achievements became clear. "Captain Mitchell, I need to understand something. With your combat record and decorations, you should be well known throughout the tactical aviation community. How is it possible that Colonel Hartwell was unaware of your background?" Sarah's response revealed the systematic anonymity that had characterized her extraordinary career. "General, I've always preferred to let mission results speak rather than promote personal achievements. My combat records are classified at levels that limit access to operational personnel only." The explanation made perfect sense to anyone familiar with special operations protocols. Pilots who flew close air support for classified missions often had their service records compartmentalized to protect operational security and the lives of ground forces they had supported. Colonel Hartwell's face reflected dawning horror as he realized he had been dismissing someone whose classified service record contained achievements that would have earned immediate respect from any knowledgeable military professional. His assumptions had been based on complete ignorance of Sarah's actual capabilities. General Hayes continued her questioning with growing fascination. "Captain, can you provide any details about your most significant combat actions without compromising operational security?" Sarah paused thoughtfully before responding, clearly weighing classified restrictions against the general's legitimate need to understand her background. "In 2021, I provided close air support during a 72-hour siege of forward operating base Chapman in Helmand Province." Her quiet words carried weight that made everyone listening lean forward to catch every detail. The siege of Chapman had been legendary among special operations forces, though details had never been publicly released due to classification levels that protected ongoing operations. For 3 days, enemy forces surrounded the base with approximately 400 Taliban fighters attempting to overrun defensive positions, Sarah continued. I flew 18 consecutive combat sorties, remaining on station for extended periods to provide continuous fire support for defending forces. The numbers were staggering. 18 combat missions in 72 hours represented flying that pushed both pilot and aircraft far beyond normal operational limits. The physical and mental demands would have broken most aviators, but Sarah had sustained maximum performance under impossible conditions. General Hayes' expression reflected amazement at the scope of Sarah's achievement. Captain, that level of sustained combat operations is unprecedented in modern aviation. How did you maintain effectiveness over such an extended period? Sarah's answer revealed the depth of her tactical knowledge and physical conditioning. The A-10's design allows extended loiter time with multiple weapon systems. I coordinated with tanker aircraft for aerial refueling and rotated between different ammunition types based on evolving ground force requirements. Her description painted a picture of tactical mastery that went far beyond basic pilot training to encompass comprehensive understanding of integrated combat operations under maximum stress conditions. Sarah had essentially conducted a one-woman air campaign that saved an entire forward operating base. The general's voice carried obvious respect as she asked about the mission's outcome. Captain, what were the results of your actions during the Chapman siege? Sarah's response was delivered with characteristic understatement despite describing extraordinary heroism. Enemy forces withdrew after sustaining significant casualties. No friendly personnel were lost during the engagement, and the base remained operational throughout the siege. What she didn't mention was that her precision flying had eliminated enemy positions that conventional artillery couldn't engage due to proximity to friendly forces, or that ground commanders had credited her actions with preventing what could have been a catastrophic defeat for coalition forces. Have you ever witnessed someone's true story completely change how you saw them, and what does it mean when heroes walk among us unrecognized? Staff Sergeant Williams had been listening to the conversation with growing pride in his pilot's achievements. General Hayes, ma'am, if I may, Williams interjected respectfully. Captain Mitchell has letters from soldiers whose lives she saved. They call her the guardian angel of Helmand Province. The crew chief's comment revealed another dimension of Sarah's service that transcended official recognition. Ground troops had given her a nickname that reflected their gratitude for her life-saving actions during combat operations that most people would never know about. General Hayes turned back to Sarah with an expression that combined respect with concern about military promotion policies. Captain Mitchell, with your combat record and decorations, you should be wearing major's insignia at minimum. What has prevented your advancement through normal promotion channels? Sarah's answer revealed systemic problems within military personnel management that valued visibility over actual achievement. General, my assignments have been primarily with classified units supporting special operations. That service doesn't generate the kind of visibility that typically drives promotion boards. The explanation highlighted a fundamental flaw in military advancement systems that often overlooked the most capable personnel because their achievements occurred in classified environments where recognition was limited by operational security requirements. Colonel Hartwell finally found his voice, though his words carried obvious shame at his earlier dismissiveness. General Hayes, I clearly failed to properly research Captain Mitchell's background before making today's mission assignments. Her performance has demonstrated capabilities that our entire wing should study and emulate. The colonel's admission represented complete reversal of his earlier attitude, but everyone understood that his credibility had been permanently damaged by his failure to recognize Sarah's extraordinary qualifications and combat experience. General Hayes stood silent for a long moment, processing everything she had learned about Captain Sarah Mitchell while the desert wind carried the sounds of aircraft engines cooling on the flight line around them. The transformation in atmosphere was complete, with everyone present understanding they had witnessed something extraordinary. The general's voice carried authority that would reshape Sarah's career when she spoke again. Captain Mitchell, effective immediately, I'm recommending you for promotion to Major and assignment to my staff at Air Combat Command Headquarters. Your tactical expertise needs to be integrated into our training doctrine." Sarah's response reflected the same humility that had characterized her entire career despite achievements that warranted much greater recognition. "General Hayes, I appreciate your confidence, but I'm most effective when flying close air support missions for ground forces who need that capability." The exchange revealed Sarah's genuine commitment to mission over personal advancement, a characteristic that explained why she had remained in tactical assignments rather than pursuing staff positions that typically accelerated military careers. Colonel Hartwell stepped forward with obvious remorse in his voice. "General Hayes, I owe Captain Mitchell and this entire wing a formal apology. My assumptions about aircraft capabilities and pilot qualifications were completely wrong and potentially dangerous." His admission carried weight because everyone present understood that similar attitudes existed throughout the Air Force leadership structure, creating systematic undervaluation of close air support capabilities and the pilots who flew those missions. General Hayes turned to address the growing crowd of personnel who had gathered to witness the unprecedented conversation between senior leadership and the pilot whose performance had demolished every preconception about modern air warfare. "Today's exercise has demonstrated that our understanding of tactical aviation effectiveness needs fundamental revision," the general announced. "Captain Mitchell's performance represents exactly the kind of combat-proven expertise we need to emphasize in future training and operational planning." Sarah's quiet professionalism had not only vindicated her individual capabilities but had also highlighted the broader value of close air support missions that military leadership had increasingly dismissed in favor of high-technology solutions. Captain Morrison approached the group with obvious respect in his bearing, his earlier condescension completely replaced by genuine admiration. "Captain Mitchell, I owe you an apology. Your flying today was the finest tactical aviation I've ever witnessed. I'd be honored to learn from your experience." The fighter pilot's transformation reflected the broader change in attitude that Sarah's performance had created among everyone who had observed the exercise. Technical sophistication meant nothing without tactical knowledge and mission-focused professionalism. Major Thompson joined the conversation with similar respect for Sarah's demonstrated capabilities. "Ma'am, I'd like to request cross-training opportunities with the A-10 community. Today showed me how much I need to learn about real-world close air support operations." Sarah's response revealed the generous spirit that had motivated her throughout her career. "Major Thompson, the A-10 community always welcomes pilots who want to learn close air support tactics. The mission requires specific skills, but they can be developed through proper training and experience." Her willingness to teach others demonstrated the leadership qualities that had been overlooked due to her quiet demeanor and preference for mission focus over self-promotion. General Hayes pulled out her phone and began making calls that would ensure Sarah's achievements received appropriate recognition throughout the Air Force chain of command. The conversations would result in policy changes that emphasized combat experience over administrative visibility in promotion considerations. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that true expertise often goes unrecognized until the moment when it matters most, and remember that heroes walk among us quietly serving without seeking attention. Staff Sergeant Williams appeared with a stack of maintenance forms that documented Sarah's aircraft performance throughout the exercise. "General Hayes, if you're interested, these records show that HOG 27 achieved perfect mission completion with minimum fuel consumption and zero mechanical issues." The maintenance data provided quantitative proof of Sarah's superior piloting skills and aircraft management capabilities that complemented her tactical achievements during combat missions. As the group began to disperse, General Hayes made one final observation that would be remembered by everyone present. "Captain Mitchell, your performance today reminded us that military effectiveness comes from people, not just technology. The Air Force needs more officers who understand that principle." Sarah's response captured the essence of her entire career philosophy. "General Hayes, every mission succeeds or fails based on the people executing it. Technology provides tools, but tactical knowledge and commitment to the mission determine outcomes." The desert sun began to set over Nellis Air Force Base as personnel returned to their normal duties, but everyone understood that the day's events would influence Air Force training and personnel policies for years to come. Sarah climbed into her government vehicle for the drive back to her quarters, her expression unchanged despite the career transformation that had occurred during a single conversation with senior leadership. Tomorrow would bring new missions and new opportunities to demonstrate the tactical expertise that had always defined her service. The exercise had ended with complete reversal of expectations, proving that true military excellence often resided in quiet professionals who focused on mission accomplishment rather than personal recognition. Sarah Mitchell had earned respect that would follow her throughout the remainder of her distinguished career.